was real. Listen.
Hi, I'm Traci.
And I'm Kathy.
And this is Curious Explorers. Hey, Kath.
Hey, Trace.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I noticed that you are wearing blue. I don't know when the last time is, in all seriousness, that I've seen you in like a bright, it's very pretty and summery.
Oh, I don't know. I think blue is definitely a summer color for me.
It matches your eyes.
Honestly, that's very
It honestly
truthful.
does.
It really does. Sometimes I won't wear it because
it's too flattering.
No, it's not that. Do you remember Meg Foster?
The name is familiar.
So dating my I'm thinking she was what was that cop show with Tyne Daly and
oh my God. Yes.
you know what I'm talking about.
I can't remember the
back
name
in
of the
the
show.
80s, right?
Yes, I can
so it was two
see
women
them.
cops, and they were like, one was Mary Beth, and the other one was like, it was like
oh my God.
I don't remember.
A time machine.
So it was based on a movie, right? So it was like a movie of the week, and it was Tyne Daly and Meg Foster.
Oh my
and
God.
Meg Foster had these like X-ray blue eyes. They were like crazy. They were so
Everyone Google her.
Blue. They were so blue that sometimes she would have to wear contacts because people would be, disturbed by them. They were so distracted by them. Which is not to say that I find my blue eyes are so distracting.
They're like laser beams.
Yeah. But sometimes when I wear blue, certain blue, it so heightens my eyes that I get distracted. Where I'm like, oh,
I'm just like, I can't stop looking.
I can't stop looking at myself.
I'm amazing.
It's like blue steel, I did have someone say to me the other day, I was wearing a blue shirt and someone said, that's a really flattering color for you. And I said, thank you. And she goes, is that why you wear it? And I was like, yeah. Yes, duh.
That's kind of a weird question because it's like, I usually pick things that are terrible.
No, it's like, I prefer things that make me look like,
washed out.
Yeah, mud.
Drained, terrible.
So that makes me look bland. That's what I try to go. I try to blend into the wall as much as I possibly can.
My God. Oh my.
No, but I do find
it's like a great color for you.
I have almost everything I own is blue. That's why it's like, sometimes I have to blue or yellow. And that's all part of like the new me. Like the positive new me, so
wow.
I've gone very, even like even stuff that I'm buying for the house. I'm a dark and stormy person. So
yeah, I have 100 black shirts.
Yeah. I have so many black shirts. I have it's like, I'm that jeans and a black t-shirt person. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like put me in a burlap sack. I'm most comfortable in that.
Same.
But recently I have been doing one of those, like, if you want to feel better, you have to do these things. And so
yellow and blue.
Who knew? That's the cure. Yellow and blue. Green.
No, I mean,
a little Irish thing there.
All right.
Yellow and blue equals green.
I love it. Well, it looks great on you.
Thank
honestly,
you.
Like, it really does.
Black looks great on you.
That's why I have 42 different versions of the same exact thing.
Well, I'm a person who shops almost exclusively at Costco these days. Shout out Costco. Costco, if you're looking to sponsor someone, please reach out to Curious Explorers to sponsor. But I'm also one of those people where it's like, if something fits and I like it, I get it in every single color. So I have this in every color that Costco makes. So actually, I don't even know if this is Costco, but I'm going to say it's a safe bet that it is.
This is the fashion episode.
Yeah. The fashion episode. If Costco can be considered a fashion episode, then yes, it is. You and I went shopping not too long ago, like last year, and you were like, I'm going to get you into this. And you pointed to this disco ball style.
Oh,
do you remember?
Vaguely.
Yeah, you were like, that is what you're gonna wear for New Year's, and I thought to myself, that is unlikely.
But this year,
yeah, I think I have at least one more New Year's in me, and I'm wearing a disco ball.
As you should.
Yeah, as we all should.
So for people who are only listening and not watching, I am not nearly as radiant or colorful as Kathy. However, I am wearing a skull necklace.
You do look pretty radiant, though. You do.
Well, and I'll show you. That's these.
Yeah, it's like shout out to Loom.
Shout out to the Lumi Cube or whatever they like.
Shout out to potential sponsors. Lumi Cube.
We need the sponsorship.
Yeah, we do.
I know.
We need that. No, I'm up in the Cape, so it's been sunny. So
nice.
I have it's been today was actually a really beautiful day, but it's not nearly as humid as it is where you are, I don't think. Oh my God. It's like 72, 73 degrees here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Here it's been like hell if hell had high humidity.
It's like the devil called. He wants its weather back.
Yeah, really. Take it.
The dogs were outside. I know everyone's like, wow, I can't wait to hear about the weather more. But great. She's going to talk about dogs now. She's going to talk about terrific.
But they're hellhounds.
Terrific. We've gotten to the part about the dogs. No, but they were outside today, and they never get to be outside. But I mean, just in general, they just don't get to have the space or anything. And up here, it's, they can run around. So I let them outside, and I came up here and I was doing something, and I got distracted, and I never leave them outside by themselves. So, but I was upstairs doing something, and Finn started barking, and I thought, he must be barking at the mailman or the mail person or whatever, the postal carrier. And, he just kept barking, and I was like, Finn, be quiet. I'll be down in a second. Then I realized, wait, they're outside. Two of them were at the door, like knocking on the door, like, hello. Are you gonna
like we're concerned?
Like we want to come inside. And I thought, wow, they've actually learned that, because they never did that before. They don't scratch to be let in or anything like that. They're at the door like, hello, we don't have thumbs. we are self-sufficient, but we have no thumbs. And you'll be happy to know that the bunnies are very, very brave and torment me pretty much every day. Big bunnies, big long-legged bunnies. And as you know, they're the only thing I'm afraid of. They're here now too. So we've got a lot of those.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, till the dogs catch them. Then we'll see how sweet it is.
Oh my God, this episode's already going to a dark place.
Yeah, it's and it's gonna get it'll get darker.
Ooh,
but not terribly dark. There's a light. Light.
Good. Before we get into that, I have a 2-second thing. People are going to be like, good Lord, move this episode. But I'm holding in my hand a spoon that I referred to. Actually, you and I did a Mind Matter episode a while back.
Yeah, when we mentioned him. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I did a lightened up, slightly psychology-esque one on my other podcast a few episodes back. And if people were wondering what the spoon looked like that I bent at the spoon bending event, that's
wow, you did that?
I did. And I have to tell you, you can't, even if I muscle it, I can now make it a little closer together.
Can you straighten it out?
I mean, not just with my hands.
No, I mean,
I'm trying.
I mean, doing the process.
I mean, I would assume you can.
Do you think so?
So the quick summary of this is that here's my quick story about this, but I was at this remote viewing thing. At all these things, there's always, I feel like, a spoon bending event. And a lot of people are great. Some people have forks and literally the tines are twirled. Right. And there's no way to muscle that. So I'd been in one of these once before and I failed miserably. I couldn't do it. I felt self-conscious. Everybody's yelling, bend, bend, bend. So long story short, now this is like 8 years later, I'm at this thing and Everybody's yelling at their spoons. It's mostly men at these things. There are more women now than before, but like I guess there's a kind of testosterone kind of thing. I don't know. But anyway, like, that thinking like I am going to make this bend to my will.
Right.
Even if they're yelling at the molecules of the spoon, I guess. I don't know. Someone's going to at me and I'm fine with that. But this woman there, shout out to Carmen, came up to me and she was like, that's not going to work for you. And I felt kind of weird trying to do that. And she said, just imagine like yourself connecting with the molecules of the spoon and, sending it love and feeling in that, the molecules like softening, which is not probably what happens. But long story short, you're holding it with 2 fingers and you feel like the metal is getting softer. And this is a regular spoon. And then, it very easily bent between my 2 fingers and then it feels more solid. So I figured I would show that to people who, I'm in many ways extraordinary, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. But
it's one of my superpowers.
Yes. But I am a miserably below average spoon bender. So if I can do this, pretty much anybody can, but it's intriguing, right? Because after you're done doing it, the metal feels different. It becomes rigid and you literally break the spoon if you tried to straighten it or if you tried to just bend it normally.
What do you think? And now we're doing a spoon bending episode, but what do you think? Like, so we choose spoon bending because someone chose spoon bending, right? Someone chose it. It became a thing. It's so
I think it's Uri Geller.
I mean, I think he wasn't the first. He was the most famous.
He popularized it, yeah.
Yeah, he was.
And then
he
had that
famous,
one.
But they were doing
incident.
like Didi. Hume was doing it. Like back in the 1860s, the 1870s, people were doing these things, and I know that they were doing it in Eastern Europe. It was a big thing in Eastern Europe, and especially spoons were not, they were expensive. So it wasn't something that you just casually did. So the idea of being able to do this, plus they were usually silver, which was, it wasn't that it was softer. Silver is a little bit softer, but it's really weird that you brought this up though, because I watched a movie last night.
This is crazy.
No, it's really weird. I watched a movie last night.
Because I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to show Kathy.
Called Red Light. Have you seen it?
No, I've never heard of it.
So it's shout out to Red Light. So it's Cillian Murphy, Elizabeth. I can't remember her last name. She's in the Marvel movies. She's Scarlet Witch. Her sister is Mary-Kate and Ashley. Can't remember her last name. Elizabeth Olsen. So it's Sigourney Weaver, Cillian Murphy, Robert De Niro, and Elizabeth Olsen. Actually, there's another guy, Toby, the guy who played
Maguire.
Not Toby Maguire, the guy who played. I'm not going to remember that either. But another Academy Award winner, and
people are like screaming at their phones or their
they know exactly what I'm talking about, and they're like, take ginkgo, do something, get your memory back. He who's the guy that wrote not Executioner's Song Truman Capote. So he played Truman Capote. This guy, Toby, he was in Elizabeth I. You would know him if you saw him. Okay. But anyway, that's a pretty stellar cast, right? Like that's a legit cast. So the movie is probably about 10 years old, maybe a little bit less. I think it's probably 10 years old. And it's essentially a paranormal investigator, but at an academic, at the academic level. So Sigourney Weaver plays a paranormal investigator, a person who essentially investigates what she believes to be is consistently fraudulent claims, and if not fraudulent, misinterpreted stuff. So it's like if you have the right controls in place, she was like, in 30 years with proper controls in place, I've never experienced or seen something that I could consider paranormal. And it goes through like how they do certain things, right? Like, so how to mediums, how can mediums commit fraud? How can all of this stuff? But one of the things that they did was Robert De Niro plays the, I would say Uri Geller esque
Okay.
psychic medium, although he also had psychic mediumship. But one of the things that he did psychic surgery, which is weird,
Yeah.
and he did spoon bending. So they were showing that, and I remember I was kind of falling asleep as I was watching it, but I woke up to the spoon bending thing, and I remember it just stuck in my mind because I was like, wow, you don't see that much anymore.
No.
You know, you don't see it. And like you talk about Geller was always on, the Tonight Show, and he was always on the Inquirer, and he was always on these entertainment shows like That's Incredible or something like that. And if you go back to the 60s and 70s, he was on like Merv Griffin and stuff like that. He's still around too.
Well, this is my little bit of trivia, and I'm largely Uri Geller naive, but I know that a lot of the remote viewing original people and the Stanford Research Institute people worked with him, I think, quite a bit. And despite that one incident where he faked something, because I think he was afraid he wouldn't be able to do it on command, which I think trashed his reputation for a while. But
and honestly, it should have. You can't fake. You can't fake. You can't.
No, you don't. You get that one chance, really.
Mhm.
But they said he's the real deal. That he is like an extraordinary psychic and very telekinetic.
I mean, listen,
I don't know.
I would say, I think there's a lot of people who, when you slip into it being your profession and not just your kind of calling, when you slip into this is how I'm going to make my living, that's a tough place to be, because you don't get to have a day off. You don't get to not do it. You don't get for it to not be successful. You don't get, you can't
go on the Tonight Show and
it's not working. You got to do it. If you say you're going to do it, you got to do it. And unfortunately, it's one of those situations where, if you commit fraud once, you're a fraud. That's it. In everyone's mind, you're a fraud. And the fact is that it's unethical to do that. And I mean, I know a lot of mediums, and I know a lot of people who make their living doing that way. And that I've done seances for years, right? I've done them for years. I don't feel, and I don't do them right now. And the reason that I don't do them right now is I fully know that I could do a seance that the people that were at are at the table would like. I just don't feel like it would be ethical for me to do it right now, because I don't feel it, but I do know that I could manufacture enough in other ways. And I don't mean like tricks. I just mean like really good guesses. You know what I mean? That would make people feel satisfied and feel like they had been at a legitimate thing. But that's a very difficult thing to do when that's who you are. Like when you're, when you're, not only is your livelihood dependent on it, but probably the livelihood of people who work for you. And, but unfortunately, and it's true, it really hurt his reputation. And I do think it was recoverable for him. I do, but it really did hurt his reputation. And it's one of those things. It's like, he didn't do it 99 times, but he did it once. The truth is he probably did it more than once. He got caught once, but it also doesn't negate the other times that he was successful in what he was saying he was doing.
Right.
It's just a very, when you're starting to do it as your profession, it's very difficult for that to recover when you actually you lose people's trust.
No, 100%. This show, this episode might be entitled The Tangents.
Yeah.
But
and it's probably going to be the most popular one that we do, where people are like,
it's hard to know.
Favorite.
I
that
love
one
that
was
one.
Awesome.
Absolutely. We got Bunnies, we got Blue Steel, we got a whole
Yeah, there
bunch
was
of stuff. We
Kathy
got
looked fantastic. Her eyes were so blue.
they really are. It's amazing.
It's like this.
It's unnerving.
Her eyes were so blue. I didn't care what she was saying.
The people on the radio have to imagine it.
Yeah, the
Or
radio.
the radio. Oh my
We
God,
go
what am
back
I
to
from
1984.
1903?
Yeah, the people who got in their
The people.
time machines and listened to
Well, we were
us on
talking
the
about Time
radio.
Daily
What's
and
so funny is that you said 1983 and I said 1984. We both
oh
went
my
back to
God.
exactly the
I
right.
might have said 1902. I don't
Oh,
know.
1902. Were there radios then?
It was
I
a
don't know. I
great
have to
time.
look.
This has gone off the rails.
Yeah,
My
we
last off
lost
the
it.
rail thing before we get to the creepy heart of tonight's show is this weekend I went to a mediumship development circle at the Spiritualist Church near me. It's a well-known place and a lot of great mediums have trained there. But the reason I'm thinking about that is because shout out to Reverend Joe Scheel, who was the one, teaching in this circle. And he said, and I give him a lot of credit for it. He said, like, you can be authentically coming up with information, but if it's not specific enough, if it's not real evidential mediumship, it's not that valuable. Like I'm paraphrasing, maybe he would say it differently. And he said there are people out there who are just doing crap mediumship. Now, a skeptic would say it's all crap, and that's absolutely not true. But his thing is like, you got to train to come through with evidence that is meaningful and specific, very relevant to the person, and that you couldn't otherwise know.
Right.
And I think there is a higher burden of proof on people who are doing any kind of psychic work, and I would put telekinesis and spoon bending, all that, and under that broad umbrella. But the burden of proof is bigger. It just is.
I would add to that, once you charge a ticket, that's it, and
Yeah.
and then on you, once you charge a ticket, you have to be willing to say, hey guys, it didn't work out tonight. Here's your money back. Or you have to be willing to say it may or may not happen.
Right.
And
Yeah.
accept
I can't read
accept
you.
that you have bad nights. I remember we had a psychic that was at the store once, someone and she's excellent. She's great. She's a lovely person. She's terrific. You know who I'm talking about.
There's a few people who are contenders, but I think I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but this is someone I liked. So
I do. I'm picturing her, and you're telepathically sending
yes,
the image.
I'm sending it
I
to
see
you.
her.
And I remember
Blonde.
yes. I remember her sending somebody out of a reading, and she only did 1 or 2 readings a day because it was so exhausting for her.
Yeah.
So she was spending the whole, this was her whole day. This was her day's wage. And she had someone came out and she said she can't read me. And
Sometimes you can't.
And she just gave her money back,
Good
which,
for her.
well, it really impressed me because I always say in the shop, I always say to people, and this is something that I do for the benefit of the psychic and the benefit of the person who's getting the reading. You are paying for their time. That's what you're paying for. We're going to have a price point. No one's going to come back at you and say, oh, you know what? We're going to sell you this, upgrade you to this candle, or the price that we quoted you was this, and now it's this. It's not going to be like that. It's their time. But it was very impressive to me that she came out and said, I could not connect with this person. I could not get anything. I cannot in good conscience take their money. All right. Are we ready?
Yeah.
So I thought we would do something a little bit different today. I've been thinking a lot about, history is my jam. And what a lot of people don't know is I had a very, very useful bachelor's degree. And my bachelor's degree was in literature. So that was very helpful and very, very, well, actually, it was great. I loved it. It's informed my life. I haven't really done anything with it, except that it has informed my life.
I was going to say.
Most of us come to the paranormal through a few different avenues, and usually we come through more than one, right? So some of us come to the paranormal through grief. Some of us come to the paranormal just through curiosity. I like to say that I was born this way, and I really
Yeah, I
was.
believe it.
But another way is, and one of the ways that we feed it is through literature and through the arts, right? So through its representation in things that we are entertained by. And one of the most interesting characters to me, one of the most interesting books to me, was Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Ooh.
which is a great book. I always go back and forth. It's an enormously important work. It changed the genre. It defined the genre, but it was very important too because it was a kind of a little bit boring, but Stoker told his stories using new technology. So the story was essentially a story in letters. So it was a story that was all about evidence. So it was told through the diaries, the letters, the articles, and in one case through the record recordings of its characters. So all of these people were writing down and recording the experiences that they were having. And when he was writing, they had just figured out how to record on wax records, on wax cylinders, I should say. And one of his characters actually kept a diary that way. So it's really kind of interesting,
Oh,
right?
very
So
compelling.
he was very ahead of his time in that. The story, I always go back and forth where it's like, is Bram Stoker a great writer? And there's an argument that he's not. There's an argument that he's not a terrific writer, but because he did write more than Dracula. But there's also the argument that Dracula is a great novel, and if you write a great novel, you are a great writer. So I don't know if you have to hit a certain mass, but I'm going to say he's a great writer. Also because he's Irish, so I'm going to lean in on that as well.
He's got bonus points.
He's got bonus points. He also
He's probably buried in a blue shirt.
Yeah, probably with fabulous eyes.
His fabulous eyes.
Fabulous blue eyes. He also married Oscar Wilde's ex-girlfriend.
That's crazy.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Right. And Oscar Wilde wrote Dorian Gray. Right. So if we're looking at and Oscar Wilde was a great writer.
We should do a Dorian Gray episode.
Yeah, well, we should do a haunted portraits episode.
Ooh.
Right? Because there's a lot of them.
All right. Anyway, we should have a haunted portraits done of us.
Well, we would have to haunt our portrait.
Well, we're kind of hauntingly.
Well, actually, you talked a little bit about it, right? Or photography's a little bit like a little bit.
Right, but I digress.
But I digress. I'm tripping
Dracula.
down this path. So, but one of the characters that he created in Dracula was Professor Abraham Van Helsing, and Bram Stoker's name is Abraham, so he obviously saw himself in probably a little bit in this role. And I think Van Helsing is a really interesting character, and probably more interesting than any other character, including Dracula, because he is the person that is learned in all of the kind of obscure and supernatural lore. And he wouldn't look at it lore; he would look at it as fact. But Van Helsing, if you were to refer to someone as Van Helsing, they're kind of the person that everybody turns to for knowledge and assistance in issues that are not common and not necessarily just supernatural. So I started thinking, well, are there real Van Helsings out there? Who were the real Van Helsings? Who was he basing these people on, specifically in his time period? So I decided that we would do an episode on Van Helsing, the man, the myth, the monster hunter.
Wow, what a great Kathy! So creative. You get extra points. I wish I had some merch to give you.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna get this pin, this invisible pin. So, well, you got to kind of set the stage a little bit, in the so Dracula was written in the 19th century, so it was in the late 1800s, and so we have to imagine 19th century Europe, where stories of the undead were more than just folklore. They were fear manifest. They were what people were afraid of. And at the center of the most enduring tales of vampires is the enigmatic figure of Professor Abraham Van Helsing. So we're going to peel back the veil between fiction and reality to discover whether Van Helsing was purely Stoker's invention, or were there real people out there, real historical figures out there, physicians, folklorists, scholars who are interested in the occult, who walk that razor's edge between science and superstition. And also, maybe not a razor's edge, maybe where science and superstition were the same thing. Was there ever a real Van Helsing, or is he just a mirror reflecting the anxieties and the fascination of the Victorian world? So you got to kind of figure where we're at, right? We're in the late 1800s. Most houses don't have electric lights yet. You know, most rooms are lit by candlelight, or in some of the more affluent places, there would be gas. Everything would be gaslit. So the world's a little bit darker, you know, and not just you know, it literally is a little bit darker. And it's not every place is London, right? So like London's darker because it's burning coal all the time. And so it's called the Big Smoke because it's just filled with smoke. But in parts of the world, you know, you still have a lot of people living in cultures, societies, villages where superstition, the belief in the undead, the belief in monsters is literally how they live their lives. So we're at the cusp of kind of the new age. We're at the cusp of the technology that you and I today take for granted. It's just starting to come into place. In Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula, Van Helsing is introduced as a Dutch professor with an almost mythical range of knowledge. And of course he's Dutch, right? Because the Dutch are so rational, right? They're always listed as or considered scholars. And there was great universities that the Dutch were part of. And there's something not necessarily mystical about them, but very rational and very academic about them. So if you want someone who's going to bring this world out of superstition and into reality, because you want your audience to consider it reality, you can't do better than a Dutch, right? Than somebody who's Dutch. Who knew, right?
I didn't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, think of Rembrandt's work. You know, okay. and you know, and kind of the way there's that great painting. It's not called The Surgeon. Is it The Anatomist? But I mean, they were known for their universities. They were known for their scholarship in academia. So he had an almost mythical range of knowledge: medicine, philosophy, theology, and folklore. And all of those were equally important. He was called in to help diagnose Lucy Westenra, who's one of the early main characters in Dracula. And those of you who have not seen the movie or read the book, read the book. Read the book. Not that the movies are terrible, but read the book. He quickly becomes the novel's voice of both logic and lore. He is the one who recognizes the signs of vampirism and proposes solutions that are as spiritual as they are scientific. And he does this based on what the stories and the folklore have been in the past. So he has garlic, sacred wafers, crucifixes. These are all wielded not as superstition, but as tools in a battle against an ancient evil. So these were actually things that were like, no, this is what works, right? You know, if you have a vampire, you need garlic. That's what everybody knows. That's what works for them. And so he came with all of this knowledge and an understanding of how to use it. He also instantly recognized what was going on when nobody else had. Stoker portrays him as deeply moral, emotionally intelligent, and deeply committed to his cause. Van Helsing's blend of compassion and conviction, combined with his rigorous intellect, makes him a character who transcends mere genre tropes. He represents the struggle of a modern world trying to come to terms with ancient fears that won't stay buried. So, you know, you have the light of technology and rationality being shown. But it's not getting rid of the shadows, right? Because those things still do exist. So these stories and these things that we want to hide, just like one of the characters, like I said, he's keeping a diary on a wax. He's keeping a record. He's recording his voice, which is magic, essentially. So you have someone who's super, super cutting edge, who has to turn to someone and who's bringing with him really arcane knowledge of something that the people in this novel don't want to acknowledge exists, which is these ancient kind of stories. So Van Helsing, he didn't come out of a vacuum. There are several historical figures that helped shape the character's complex identity. One of the most significant is Arminius van Buren, a Hungarian traveler and scholar who personally knew Stoker. Van Buren's accounts of Eastern European superstition and folklore, particularly having to do with vampires, who were not like the sexy vampires that we think of. They were more zombie-like. They were called revenants. Particularly involving vampires and revenants, offered firsthand cultural insight that deeply colored the novel. So he sat down and he talked to these guys. Stoker was also involved in the theater, so he got to meet a lot of unusual people and spend time with them. And late night talks. You imagine him sitting around, having a cup of coffee.
I was imagining scotch. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know that he did though. I don't know that he did. He was a bit of a teetotaler. I mean, Stoker was he was an interesting guy. He kind of comes off as a little bit of a nerd, where he's super excited about these things, but he didn't fit in every place that he wanted to, right? I'm not sure he knew that though. Like, he kept trying. There's something very likable about him, but there's also something that you're like, oh, I knew that guy in high school. There's that vibe that you have about him. Like, oh, but I'm happy for him. Oh, he got it like a world famous novel. Way to go, Bram. Another key figure is Gerard van Swieten, who was an 18th century Dutch physician. And he was actually summoned by Empress Maria Theresa to investigate vampire hysteria in rural regions of the Habsburg Empire.
This is true.
This is true.
True
yeah, remember, okay. 18th century, so 1700s. In the 1700s, you had lots of vampire stuff happening. You also had lots of werewolf stuff happening. Because at the time, people were reporting that these things were happening, right? So things were happening. And then they were like, that sounds like a werewolf. Somebody got torn up. That sounds like a werewolf. So they would reach out to the local landowners, who were their landlords, who were essentially, the people who were responsible for them, who would then reach out to the government and say, listen, this stuff's happening. Something's going on. Not necessarily believing that it was vampires or werewolves, but it's like, but people's animal stock is getting eaten up. You got to take care of this, because it was affecting rents. It was, and also people were terrified. So, especially someone like Empress Maria, she was very beloved, and she absolutely would have done things to make her people feel safe. And they may not have believed it, but they knew that the peasantry did. So they would have called someone, and in the 17th century, there were definitely people who would have looked at this and said, no, maybe there are things like vampires. They would have still believed in that. Van Sweeten's reports, which debunked vampire claims while still advocating for, but were advocating for burial reforms. They blended medical rationalism with sociocultural awareness, qualities that are reflected in Van Helsing. In other words, it's like, we got to make sure these people are really dead, and we got to make sure that we're burying them properly so that animals aren't getting them. And all of these things that we look at now, and we're like, duh, of course that's what it should have done. But we only know that because these things happened, right? So there's a cumulative effect to our knowledge. And we're sitting atop a heap of data that was collected by events like this that happened. And then there's another person was Dom Augustin Calmet, a French monk who compiled vampire testimonials and treated them with critical openness. And Dr. Max Muller, a philologist who argued that myths encode deep psychological truths. Together, these men formed a real-world constellation of knowledge that Bram Stoker drew from to create a character who walked between reason and belief. All of these people would have been writing, would have been publishing, and would have been fairly well known in his time. So they also would have given lectures. So they traveled, with the exception, I would say, of the monk, but his writings would have been available and they would have also been referenced by other people. So now we have vampire panics and occult science. Vampire hysteria wasn't confined to stories. It had real life consequences. In the 1700s, rural communities in Eastern Europe, and I can think of one very particular case, experienced waves of vampire panics. Entire villages dug up corpses. Public officials documented these cases in chilling detail. Corpses were described as bloated, fresh looking, or bleeding from the mouth. All normal signs of decomposition, but they were misunderstood as the supernatural. There was also a case in the United States in the 1890s that heavily influenced Stoker and his decision to write a vampire story, and it took place in Rhode Island. So, I mean, we have this tendency to think, well, we were rational from the beginning. It's not irrational. Fear happens. And these ideas were still kind of fomenting. So, Stoker is sitting there. He wants to write this story, but he's like, I have to be influenced by science and by and how do I bring? And so he's drawing on all of these people that were real people. Van Sweeten's reports laid the groundwork for a scientific approach to these fears, but they didn't eliminate them. These stories traveled west, creating curious minds in England where Gothic literature flourished. At the same time, the 19th century saw a rise of the spiritualist movement. The Society for Psychical Research, founded in 1882, began studying seances, hauntings, and poltergeists. And remember, these were great minds that were were members of the Society for Psychical Research. In the United States, it was William James. William James is one of the greatest, scholarly minds that America's ever produced. Meanwhile, theosophy and occult philosophy were booming. And this was a time when science and the supernatural were not in opposition. So science was still looking at the stuff and saying, well, how do we explain this? Right? Not, well, it's a lie or it's false. How do we explain it? But literally, how do we explain this? How do we explain vampires? Van Helsing, as a character, perfectly represents this fusion. He's not afraid of testing faith with evidence or of testing evidence against faith. So he relies on the word, essentially a Christian ideology, and treats those things as factual, right? So it doesn't matter whether or not the cross works because of faith in Christ. The cross works, and then you go from there. So Van Helsing evolved from a literary figure into a cultural archetype, the sage who walks between science and the supernatural. In fiction and in reality, this model lives on. Today's paranormal investigators, demonologists, and even fringe scientists often mirror this hybrid role. They combine historical research with ritualistic practices, and they mix skepticism with belief. Folklorists and anthropologists studying supernatural traditions also embody Van Helsing's mindset, respectful of myth, but using their own methodology in research and using forensic style research as well. Whether in the dusty archives of universities or in the haunted battlefields of paranormal tourism, Van Helsing's legacy can still be seen and referenced. People kind of lean in that you can be a scholarly paranormal researcher or paranormal investigator. He also represents a form of intellectual bravery, the willingness to explore ideas beyond what's accepted, and not for shock value, but to understand what frightens and fascinates us. And the legacy continues in modern storytelling, academia, and fieldwork. There's a reason why we all like to, present ourselves with tons of books around us, right? Because learning in this, where we are is sexy. Plus, it's a lot easier it's a lot more comfortable when you're having a paranormal experience to go to somebody, or a lot more palatable to go to somebody who has some kind of research and academic chops than it is to go to somebody and, wearing a black t-shirt running in the woods. And again, I wear a black t-shirt and run in the woods. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's a certain sector of society where, they're not going to be comfortable getting their information from that. They want to feel like where their information is coming from is steeped in research and steeped in some kind of education and field work.
I'm so sorry. Sabrina you can't see probably because you're looking at your notes.
No, I've seen.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I think she's fascinated by you.
Maybe.
Because
it's probably my blue eyes.
It's right.
She's probably like, wow.
I'm fascinated. I can't stop looking at her.
I've got a cat's eye on her.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
She's like rubbing against the microphone. I'm like, really?
She's like, and her voice.
She probably likes vampires too.
Yeah, exactly.
She's kind of a
unique she's probably a familiar. She's probably your familiar. That's probably what it is. Probably.
Sorry.
No, but I mean, just the use of the words like universities, like that's what makes you feel more comfortable. Even when people talk about, like, when they reference me, when they're like, oh, I have an issue. A lot of times they're like, I came to you because you're a historian, right? And so that imparts something to people. And it's like, yeah, I do run around the woods in a black t-shirt, though, just so we're clear.
Sometimes a blue t-shirt,
but some always
not when you're trying to be,
exactly.
Be the
black t-shirts make my eyes black. But also, you remember, why did I go back and get my degree? Because of that perception, right? So it's like, but there is something about it. And Van Helsing as a character, he makes you feel like it's perfectly acceptable now for me to understand that this is what's happening, because this guy, he didn't come from belief. He came from knowledge, and it led to belief. There was a particular case in Poland that was very, 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 very detailed. And there was also a case in France about a werewolf that went on for like 3 months. I mean, there's court documents about it, where, by that I mean government ministers who went out to do this research, and they're saying, where they came back and they were like, oh, it sounds like it might be a werewolf. These people weren't stupid. They weren't like, they weren't lunatics. They were interpreting data based on their understanding of the natural world. And so when you look at someone like Van Helsing, who is literally a trope, if you watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you have that guy sitting amongst his books, and he's going to reference what this demon is and that demon is. And we see him all of the time, and we see her all of the time. We see that person all of the time, which is that there's somebody out there that understands both the science of this world and the superstitions of this world. And so it was interesting for me in digging into this to realize that there were Van Helsings out there, that Van Helsing is as a character is based on real people. So he's this balance between the intuition that we experience and the evidence that we see, but he's real. And I think that a lot of us would like to be Van Helsing, even though we're probably leaning a little bit more towards, running in the woods.
In the black t-shirt.
Yeah. Listen, black t-shirt or not black t-shirt, but we're running in the woods with the Blair Witch running away. But I thought it was really interesting that, that these fictional stories almost always have a real world counterpart.
Oh yeah.
So I thought that was, I thought the subject was really, really interesting. And I thought that was really interesting.
It really is. So interesting, Kathy. This was a really good one. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Sabrina, is there anything you'd like to say? Now she's pretending that.
Yeah, she's like, listen, you embarrassed me. Okay, I was rubbing on that microphone, and you made
I didn't know if
me.
you saw that. I didn't know if you
fine.
saw it.
So that's it. That was. I thought that was a curious exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope our beloveds enjoyed it. So I'm curious what our listeners think. What kind of things do you want to hear more about? Kathy has an unlimited reservoir of interesting things that we could cover. But we want to know what you want to hear.
Yeah. Let us know.
Absolutely.
And we will delve into it.
Absolutely. And I don't know what I'm going to do about Sabrina next time.
Listen, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
It's funny. Just she's aptly named, I guess.
Yeah.
My
That's a good
teenage
name.
cat.
Yeah. The teenage cat. Again, a familiar.
Yes, she is.
Familiar.
But Cass, so great to see you.
Great to see you.
And until next time, everyone, stay curious.
And of course, keep exploring.
Bye for now.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
You've just listened to the Curious Explorers podcast with the Kathy Kelly and Traci Stein. If you enjoyed the episode, remember to like, share, follow, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And of course, until next time, stay curious.
The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real. Is it? The paranormal is real. It is real. The paranormal is real.